Welcome to the fourth episode of Boozy Browsing. Today on Boozy Browsing, I'm excited to welcome someone who's come a long way since our early days together, Shawn Mealey.
Yo, yo, what's up?
Fun fact, Shawn actually started out as my intern, if he remembers that, back in
I do actually remember that. For those who, I don't have it as my tagline on like Slack and stuff anymore, but when we were working together, yeah, that was my @ handle was the intern. So yeah, I still am lovingly referred to as the intern by all of our North Point fans.
Well, you were the intern, so
yeah.
I didn't know that. Yeah, since those days, Shawn's built an impressive career, moving from hands-on engineering, leading digital transformation projects, bridging the gap between business and tech. 'Cause all the things they learned at North Point, I'm sure. We'll get into that, whether he learned it or not. Probably not. Mentoring teams along the way. He brings a collaborative spirit, as you'll see already. Strategic mindset, plenty of stories from the trenches, some of which I'm sure we'll get to share. Maybe roast a little bit today.
Yeah.
So grab a drink, join us for a conversation that comes full circle. Welcome, Shawn.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been way too long.
Yeah.
Matt and I were talking a little bit before we started recording here, and it's been like, has it been a decade since we've worked together? Is that right?
Yes.
Jeez.
Yeah, because I left North Point a little over 10 years ago.
And since Matt was my best friend, of course, I couldn't stand to be in the office without him there. So that's also about the time that I left too. But yeah, I just want to give you a quick shout out. By the way, you've been working at Endeavor this entire time too, right? Like that's nuts. That's crazy. So congratulations. It's how many years has it been for you now?
So in a couple of weeks, I guess, because it was June. The official date, I think, is the 15th or something like that. June 15th will be 10 years.
That's
that
amazing.
will have been a semi-profitable and profitable company. I guess.
You heard it here first, folks.
Kind of hard.
Higher
Kind of hard not to be profitable when you're the bootstrap. Like you and your partners are the bootstrapping, and
yeah.
you kind of have to pay for things. So yeah, it's been quite the experience. I definitely, if you ever thought about doing consulting, I have some thoughts around that.
Nice.
Because it's a challenge.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny.
And a lot of day drinking is we're going to be doing right now. So I'm going to open mine. We're going to get a little.
Ooh, that's a crisp little. What are you drinking today?
So I like to go with Colorado beers for these,
Okay.
and this is a Upslope Brewing. Get the right. And if anyone's into skiing or snowboarding, that comes into it's the Winter Park.
Nice.
So Mary Jane territory, which I can't. I've kind of retired from it. I blew up my knees and don't really do it for a few years, but it might still. I think it's still open, or only closed within the last couple of days.
Oh,
so
oh my gosh, really?
Ski season here.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
I've been hearing like there was like a lack of snow recently over by you guys, but that's awesome. It's actually been pretty cold out by us, so it's been a lot of rain recently. But since you shared your drink, of course, I also have to represent. So for those of you who don't know, I live in the Hudson Valley region, so I'm about like 2 hours north of New York. So I brought this bad boy out. I'm going hard here.
Very nice.
Yeah. So we have the Taconic Distillery. My wonderful neighbor Charlie got this for me. So I'm going to be. It's been aged 5 years. Oh God, it's 64% alcohol.
Oh, you're going for a good one.
Yeah.
It might be a really interesting second half.
Yeah, you're gonna get some good content for sure. So I'm gonna try not to do too heavy of a pour here too.
Very
But
nice.
nice. So I heard you have some questions for me though.
Yeah, I mean we'll do some typical stuff. I do want to get in some critiquing of some websites. That's one thing that we've kind of done, Miki and I. But I got a burning question.
Okay.
That everyone wants to know.
Yeah.
So was it a paid internship?
It was a paid internship, I believe. I think so.
I feel like there's a story around that though.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, so I don't know if you were aware of this. You remember Victor McKenzie, right? So he also did an internship with you guys.
Yep.
So basically the way that it works.
He was on the .NET side though.
Yeah. A bunch of weirdos over there, right?
Right.
Oh man. But So Victor and I happened to go to college together at Alfred State University. SUNY College of Technology at Alfred. The last portion of your bachelor's degree is basically you have to go out and you have to do an internship. So normally a lot of the students, this is like kind of like, the baby birds leaving the nest. And so I've been shopping around. I was actually looking for internships. I don't know if you were aware of this, but I was originally looking for internships kind of closer to the Rochester area because that's kind of like where I grew up.
Right.
We had like RIT and stuff like that. But my then girlfriend, now wife of, she's going to kill me for not getting this down, 7 years now. She was currently going back home in Orange County. I had family in Long Island, so I was like, you know what, New York City, this small town upstate boy, gotta try and cut his chops.
I do remember this now that you're starting to talk about this.
Yeah. So I started shopping around, and was kind of coming up short, and then. Again, through blind luck, Victor McKenzie reached out to me and he was like, hey man, I'm working at this really cool company. I think you'd be great here. Why don't you come in? And I remember interviewing, doing my technical interview with Arwen Holmes. And again, cursing is okay on this podcast?
Yeah.
Okay. I was scared shitless of him. Still am to this day, if I'm being honest. I just find him like such he's like a just very knowledgeable, very intense guy. But we were talking about caching, and I've been doing some like web development work at the college that I've been working at, some like minor Drupal work. And I remember being like, oh yeah, like browser caching, like, so, we were talking about like what types of caching there were. I was like, yeah, you just clear your browser cache. Sometimes there'll be some changes server side that don't show up, and there you go, caching. He's like, okay, yeah, what about server-side caching? What about caching on... I was like, oh my god. Oh no, like this is... I was not prepared for this, and I was like, I thought I was bombing so hard. So I remember like texting my girlfriend at the time being like, I don't think I got it. I don't think I like did great at all. And I am just, again, looking back, I am eternally grateful that all of you guys gave me the shot that you did. I learned so much when I was working with you guys. Definitely made some flubs while I was working with you guys. But you guys basically helped to set me on the track to where I am today, which is like, it's crazy to think about. So, but that's definitely grateful. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, my first kind of dabble in web development came as an intern too, technically. I started out as, I was clipping paper advertisements for the Star Ledger at New Jersey Online.
Oh, nice.
And then since I was doing advertisement, they're like, oh, you can build some ad pages and ad banners. Like, okay, I could do that. It's like, I was going to school for computer engineering. It's like, I should know this stuff. And I kind of did this stuff. I did some work study, so I knew web development well before that, but it's like, kind of doing it professionally, but I didn't have those type of questions.
I gotta ask though, were you doing PHP development at that point, or were you doing just like straight HTML?
Perl.
A Perl?
It was Perl and just straight up HTML. No style sheets didn't exist yet.
Yeah.
And then weeks, months later, whatever, inline stuff, and then files. It was early.
Yeah, so for me, like, I started doing web development when CSS was already around. So for me, like, again, for all of you who, if you're not in web development, like, the war stories that these guys have are nuts. Like, these guys are doing... I can't even, like, picture, like, the websites that you guys are building at those points, because it's just, like, there's so much new advanced stuff.
It was so much image-based layout, and it was all tables.
I was going to say tables all the way down.
Just cutting up images. It was... I can only imagine if I could see some of that code and what it looked like. It was all like... Then we started using Dreamweaver.
Right.
Stuff. Like, I was working well. Like, that was crazy.
Dreamweaver is, I feel like, that was a good IDE. Yeah. I mean, like, I feel like now it probably doesn't hold up at all, but I feel like back in the day I was like, this is pretty nice. But I was also a poor college student, so I could never, like, afford to get like a real license.
Well, so you had to fight for an increase, or ask for an increase, right? As an intern?
Did I?
Because of the travel?
I might have.
I don't remember But so the story that I was really thinking about, and I think this was you, you didn't really set up payments very quickly. It was like weeks behind for
Oh yes, I did. Okay. So the story here
right?
was that I got a raise while I was working. I think I might have already been an associate
Yeah.
consultant at this point. So I think I had gotten a bump in title. So I was officially a consultant. I forgot about this. Oh my god. And you guys were mad at me because you're like, all right, you've done some good work. We're gonna give you a raise. And I was like, oh yeah, awesome. So pumped to be here, boss. So grateful to be here, boss. And I never checked my pay stubs, and so it was like, what was it, like 3 months later or something like that? And you're like, dude,
It was quite a while.
yeah, you're like, dude, you never got that raise. I was just like, oh, my bad. Is that bad? And you're like, well, now there's gonna be a bunch of taxes taken out on it. But yeah, I forgot about
You had to
that.
have a lump sum. Like,
Yeah, I
all
forgot
months.
about that. Oh man, sorry about that.
I didn't. I was definitely not. I was like,
Take it from me, folks. I do it just for the sheer joy of development. It's not about the bit. It's not about the benefits.
I was gonna say, as a family man now, I bet you look a little closer to make sure that pay actually comes in, or someone in your family does at least. One of the two.
My wife.
Yeah, one of the two of you do, for sure. So those were some like I have random pictures that come up on my screen, right?
Yeah.
And it's like I didn't take a ton because I just like when you came in, it was about the time I probably had a phone with ability to take pictures, right? Like I don't have a lot the early days at North Point for me, but
Yeah.
towards then. So I have some of the room and stuff like that, and I've got this room picture of us with ice cream. Do you remember why? I think you were in the Drupal room then.
I was in the Drupal room. I do remember eating the ice cream. I don't remember.
The heat had been off for days.
Yes, that's
And it was
right.
Or it was just so cold and the heat couldn't keep up. I don't remember which one it was. But
think
we
it
were
was-
all working in coats
Yep.
for days.
Yeah.
And our internal recruiter, Sandy, got us all ice cream.
I forgot about that. Yeah, because it was further down the .NET.
I had
guys.
you at the table, and it comes up every once in a while. Like
You need to send me this
Mike
picture.
Laurie.
Because I completely forgot about this. But yeah, that it was that room specifically too, right? You know what
Yeah.
it was? I think weren't they doing asbestos abatement or something like that? I think that's what it might have been. I think that's what it might have been. So the .NET guys were like further back.
You mean just they were just knocking the panels down in the cloud?
Yeah. But I think I remember like the .NET guys were like nice and cozy because they were further back, and it was just that room was just
Yeah.
like ice cold. I think I remember we like brought in space heaters for. Oh my gosh, yeah.
It was not keeping up though. No.
I forgot to tell you, like talking. I always love those like weird reward stories. So that was definitely like that was Sandy being like ha 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 ha. I was actually talking to my wife about this, and I hope this doesn't like make anybody upset, but there's a company that I worked for. I'm not gonna like name names, but we had been working. My gosh, probably like a solid 3 months on a new feature for our website that basically allowed for folks to do a la carte shopping. I had put in probably like, I don't want to say 70-hour weeks, but I'd been putting in some like long hours. And we finally launched the feature. It got out there. Things were going great. I was like, all right, awesome. I think it was like a Friday that we launched it too, which is like very, very bad practice from like a web design standpoint. Be like, oh, let's release on Friday. Right. But I was like, oh, thank God, we finally released. Oh, there's my wife. My wife's in the background. She's on the screen. She doesn't even realize that she's being recorded. But so we had finally released, and I was like, oh my God, I had been putting so much overtime in. I'm just gonna go home. I think Victoria was my fiance at this point. I was like, I'm gonna have some time with my fiance, and just have like a early start to my weekend. And my CTO was like, you can't leave. We have something for you. It's a surprise. And I was like, oh, okay. I'm like, hopefully it's good. And the company was like, hey, for your hard work and dedication, we brought in a purple twerking gorilla And I just remember this guy came and he's like, "Oh, congrats everybody! You guys released your feature. I don't know what that is." He starts like twerking and stuff like that. And I think there's video of me somewhere where they're like, everyone's like, "Yeah, congratulations!" And it just like pans over to me, and I'm just like, I was like so mad. I was like, it wasn't even a pizza. It wasn't ice cream. It wasn't anything like, "Oh, like we got you," like because this is also like. I was, we had some other perks before that were like pretty good, mainly like clothing and stuff. So this happened, and I was just like, I had to stay an hour late on a Friday after I had put in like 70 hours for like the past 3 months just for this. I was so mad. But I hope that the people, if you do see this, I do appreciate it. Like looking back now, I'm like, it's hilarious. But at the time, I was just like, I just want to go home and sleep.
Right. Yeah, that could have been a good Monday morning or Monday noon.
Yeah, right.
We're out to lunch, and we're bringing the.
Oh man, there you go. I would have been up there twerking with the purple gorilla if that was the case. Yeah. But yeah.
That actually, this wasn't even on my list. Reminding me of something you did. This I do have video of. I might actually be able to pull this in.
You should pull it in.
I think there was a bet that you could roll down the entire hallway.
Yeah.
Which you did. Like head over heels roll all the way down the hallway.
Yes, it's funny. When you invited me to do this, I was like, I know this is going to come up. So a little fun fact: I was actually already talking to Matt about this, and actually, I don't know if you're aware of this, but prior to me getting into software development, web development, I was actually for one semester I was a musical theater major. If that comes as any surprise to you.
Not anymore.
And when I was in high school, I was part of our school choir, and we had this really cool thing where we did an old medieval dinner called Magical Dinner, and there was like basically every year we'd put it on, and like all the choir kids would get dressed up in these like medieval looking outfits. But there was one role that was like the coolest of all the roles, and it was the court jester. So. I don't know if you're also aware of this. I can juggle too. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. So I was doing like acrobatics and stuff for. So like just picture being like in your high school's like cafeteria, right? And all these kids are singing, and then suddenly there's a guy, full on jester costume, just doing a barrel roll down these ramps, like up and popping up next to me, like, "Oh, good evening, ladies and gentlemen." Yeah. So. I don't even know how it came about, but I was just like, "Hey, do you guys know that I can tuck myself into a ball and I can just roll continuously?" And they're like, "No, you can't." And I was like, right. Watch me. But yeah, I should have made it a bet. I didn't get any money or anything from it. It was just the sheer, again, enjoyment of doing it. Mm-hmm. But yeah, good times. I thought you were also going to bring up the Rotary International project. And
I do have that on my list.
Yeah, I knew you.
That was very memorable as me as a manager.
So
also,
when I did this, I just want to give some context there too. So my grandfather.
Have you ever done it since? And
no.
We'll get into the details.
No. That's it. Well,
I've always. Because anytime I'm doing something like that, I'm thinking I better remember.
So that's the great thing about a lot of the companies I've worked for recently. I'm just noticing. Is it the booze, or am I tilted a little bit? I'm going to try to tilt myself. Oh, there we go. Is that a little bit better? I don't think I actually changed the tilt at all. But I forgot. So there's actually 2 of these instances where this happened. But normally, after I left North Point, I feel like production data stayed in production and staging data stayed in staging. That's the main lesson to take away from this. Again, if there's anybody who's like watching this being like, "Oh man, I want to get into web development," or like, "I'm a client," just remember those 2 rules. Production data stays in production, and like staging data stays in staging. Did you want to kick off this story at all?
Well,
or do you want me to go?
So this was a full-on rebrand, redesign, replatform.
I'm gonna even mention the client because So
Rotary. So
yeah,
so
and the reason why I was saying this brought great shame on my family was my grandfather was a huge Rotarian. So I again at this point I don't know if he was like still doing Rotary, but like when this happened I was like, oh my god, my grandfather would never forgive me for this. But yeah, long and short, so we had been working on the Rotary International website rebrand. It was a huge project, internationalization, right? Again, Drupal, was that Drupal 6 at the time? Or Drupal 5?
It wasn't 5, it would have been 6.
Yeah.
It wouldn't have been 7, so yeah.
Multi-site too, I think, right?
I know. Multilingual.
Yeah.
Multilingual.
Multilingual. But yeah, so we had been spending, I don't even know how long working on that project. That was a couple months worth of work.
It was a big one.
And so we've been working on just like again doing styling, getting like all the content architecture set up for this. And while we were doing all this work, again we had to do a lot of testing with the internationalization feature because that was like I think we had like a Drupal plugin at the time, right, where it would like you would basically give it some text and they would say, hey, yeah, this is in English. Okay, now put in like French, Italian, Spanish. Right. So as we were building this out, we still didn't have a lot of the copy, if I remember correctly. So I, again, being the cool guy that I was, went to this service that, again, I think one of my friends had kind of turned me on to when I was in college called Philorama. For those, I don't even know, is that still a website?
Do you remember that? I can't
I
believe
do. Philorama. Yeah, I do. Because, again, there was like, I think there was like Lorem Ipsum.
It was not Lorem Ipsum.
It was not Lorem Ipsum. That is the main takeaway. Philorama. I'm seeing if it's still a site. Philorama.io. No, that is not it. I don't know if it's still a filler text generator. Oh, yeah. Philorama from The Simpsons, Doctor Who. So if you notice the name there though, originally a bunch of the quotes that were provided were from Futurama. So I had been just like cranking away, right? I was just slinging code like a badass coder, and we were putting in a bunch of test data. Again, this was all supposed to be on staging, so I don't know how this happened, but long and short, some of our staging content somehow got up to... Was it staging or was it on production? That I thought it was production.
So again, this was a full-on everything. So staging was a traditional staging where
it was like
the content was created there, and then we switched over the production.
Yeah.
So not like as you're like you were saying, like a current site. If you have live site, then you copy all it and then you do development. You never go up really. But since we were deploying our staging site, that any content that was on staging was going to go live.
Yeah. So for those of you who are curious, the content that went live, if you, I don't remember the exact episode, but there's an episode in Futurama where Fry goes back in time and basically meets his grandfather, and his grandfather is like this big old loser, and he's trying to basically get his grandfather to hook up with his grandmother so that like his dad could be born, so that he could be born, yada yada yada. I forgot exactly what the quote was, but it was something like, "Oh God, Fry, you slept with your grandmother," or something along those lines. Because again, it's like that's the whole like reveal, is that like Fry actually ends up hooking up with his grandmother, so Fry is basically his own grandpa. Very bizarre. Again, looking back, pretty funny. But this is for like a very highly reputable client. Again, like very professional business people. And here's this quote about like you getting it on with your grandmother. And I just remember, had we launched already, like officially? I just remember like you guys pulling me into someone's office and being like, "Listen, there's been an incident." The clients are not happy. I think it's pretty funny, but again, this is like one of those things where, like, let's make sure it never happens again. So the long story short is, we used Lorem Ipsum from there on out.
Yep.
But yeah, oh gosh, that was embarrassing. There was also, I think, some vendor quotes that were like a little bit saucy as well. But sorry about that, Rotary, if you're watching.
Yeah, I can't remember if it actually made it live or because we were doing some testing.
I think it was testing, but it was definitely like a demo in front of the clients, and they were like, "What in sweet Stacy's name is this?" Yeah. The other one that I was going to bring up, and I don't know if you remember this is another incident where like staging data went. This one definitely did go live. Do you remember Dr. Reverend Shawn Mealey? You're smiling. You don't remember this? Okay.
No.
I'm going to give you some context because this.
Oh. I know because I know the context now.
Yeah,
I know what site that would have been.
So
that would have been very bad.
So we had been contracted to do work for Johnson & Johnson. Specifically, we were doing work on the Aveeno MD site, which is like the doctor portal.
Yeah. Basically,
doctors could sign up and they would get free samples from Aveeno with regard, like you get lotion, something like that you could hand out to people who visited your office. And if I remember correctly, too, I think Johnson & Johnson had contracted out another company. Oh, hi, that's my daughter. Yeah, that's my daughter. Just pure gold content for this streaming. But yes, I think there had been another contracting company that had been contracted to basically do. This was a multi-site project. I do remember that. We were only specifically focused on Aveeno, but I think there was like another company that had basically kind of built out the theming engine that Johnson & Johnson was rolling out to all their sites. And the one thing that I remember was when we started working on it, it was not ready to be used. I remember that. They were using SAS at the time, which SAS, amazingly enough, I think was like still kind of in its infancy. So like the tooling that they had like promised would be ready to go was not ready. So I remember we were like trying to basically like transpile SCSS and trying to get this thing just up and running and off the ground. At this point, I think I had started to kind of like get my stride when it came to Drupal development. But again, long and short, we were doing like a bunch of testing on this, putting in like just random data. So like one of the joke accounts that I did was like, hey, it's me, it's Sean, I'm a Dr. Reverend, and I put in North Point's address because again I was like, this is staging data, it's not going to go live, whatever. Like John's going to catch this, but none of this stuff. We're going live, clean slate, yada yada yada. Long and short, we had launched, and then was it like a week afterwards we got our first package of. It was a huge box filled to the brim with like we actually probably still have lotion around our house somewhere of like the eczema lotion, but it was just filled to the brim with free samples of like Aveeno like eczema cream and like lip balm and all this stuff, and it's like this is for Dr. Reverend Shawn Mealey. And it's like, oh my god, not again, because this was after Rotary. I remember that. And it's like,
oh yeah,
how do we let this happen again? So. Yeah. That is,
and just to be clear for anyone that actually is watching, you were not an intern on these projects. This was into your career.
Yeah. I was an associate consultant, I believe, during the Rotary International project, and I was a consultant because I remember Aveeno MD was just before I started working. This is actually kind of a good segue too to like some of the stuff that you wanted to talk to. I was about to be put on the project that would actually change the trajectory of my career, which was I'm trying to remember, is it Golf Digest at Condé Nast? And that was my first React project, actually.
Okay.
So that's kind of what got me onto the JavaScript train that I'm still currently writing. But yeah, I think Johnson & Johnson was the project just prior to that. But yeah, I was definitely a consultant at that point. Again, I was probably also not making nearly as much as I should have been because I hadn't checked my my pay stubs. But yeah, the thing that burned me up about that too. So again, Johnson & Johnson, if you're watching, I swear this wasn't fraud. I tried contacting you guys to stop sending us shipments. I could not get a hold of anybody.
I remember the concerns around that.
Yeah, I was like, oh my god, like they're. How do I stop this from happening? And I remember like trying to contact them, and they're just like, yeah, it's okay. You guys are just gonna get free samples. So like I think it was like every quarter or something like that, right? We would just get a box of I don't know if they're still sending it to Dr. Reverend Shawn Mealey. Do you remember what the address was for our office there?
I was just there visiting. I don't remember, like 130,
Yeah.
41st Street, because I think it was technically on the 41st Street side was the
Yeah.
address.
Good
I don't
times.
know. But it would have been a building and a suite. I don't remember all that.
It'd be hilarious to me though if there's people still just getting packages from Avino for Dr. Reverend Shawn Mealey.
Yeah.
Who knows? But
100%.
but so
Yep.
kind of going off that segue, you kind of had set up that you wanted to talk about some of the work that I've been doing, and to see
Yep.
if I could sway your mind with regards to
Yeah.
some of the stuff that I've been doing in my
So-
space versus WordPress.
I kind of want to know, now that we've been talking, so we don't have to do a long episode on this, but Miki and I tried to get Grok to convince us that headless was the way to go. It failed horribly, and in a way that, like, it was super slow. Like, this was like testing out a whole idea of like, oh, let's have it talk to us. That sucked too. But like their like argument was all like, it would read a website and tell you like what the blog post says.
Sure.
I definitely know that there are definitely ways of doing it, and there's value. I don't think that we're gonna have like, oh, you win or I win, because I feel like both of our reasonings are going to be different and very valid.
Sure.
But maybe you have some additional, because I know you've played with some other CMSs kind of on the side.
Yeah, a little bit here and there.
I only play with WordPress and Drupal a little bit.
Yeah.
So I don't know why anyone would ever build another CMS, but
Hey,
maybe you
shots
can-
fired. Shots fired. No. Okay. So let me get into it. I am going to go on record here and say that I, as a developer, I am kind of the mindset, right tool for the job, right? That being said, I'm actually gonna. This is probably gonna be a little bit of a one-sided argument here. I actually don't think that a headless CMS is always needed. I was actually just reading an article today because I'm currently in between jobs. Got all of that. But
We'll talk about
hey,
that.
yo,
You
yeah,
want to get that pitched
yeah,
hard.
right. I'm
You
threading
should
the
not
needle.
be-
I'm threading the needle. But
You should not be in between jobs. Someone should be calling you in soon.
But I was reading an article, and apparently a lot of people are starting to actually migrate away from React. The reason being is there's like a lot of complexity. There's a lot of overhead. Performance apparently is hitting bottlenecks. I don't know if that's necessarily like completely industry wide. It sounds like from some of the folks that I'm still talking to, React is still kind of like a mainstay when it comes to like front end frameworks. But I think there are other alternatives out there. And although I've been doing a lot of work doing React for the past probably like seven or more years now, it's probably been more than 7 years, because Condé Nast was like when React was the new hotness.
Yeah.
And that was, again, we're talking probably like 10 years back, because that was basically like when you left
Right.
North Point and I also ended up leaving. There's been a lot of changes to React, obviously, but like there's also a lot of alternatives too. So you got like Vue, you've got the new versions of Angular, but I think a lot of folks are also starting to kind of like take a step back and being like, do we need all of this like tooling, all of this like? Because again, I think component-driven development from a front-end standpoint
Right.
does make sense. Like it makes sense to be like, hey, here are widgets. But when I was actually working at Phase 2, another consulting company, prior to working at Daily Harvest, prior to working at Jobber Enhance, they were actually focused in a lot more on web components, which again, same sort of idea, but you're using like your native HTML, CSS, JavaScript again to have like additional functionality if you need it. But to try and give you a little bit of a devil's advocate, so one of the companies that I worked at was a startup, Rockets of Awesome. You know what? I'm just going to go out and say it. Those are the guys who did the purple twerking gorilla. So I'm sorry if I seemed like I was ungrateful. So when we first launched, we actually didn't have a content management system. again, we were using React. We were a very bare bones like MVP. We basically had the survey that you came and you completed the survey, and based on your results, we would basically send you a curated box of clothes. Still a great company too, by the way. If folks are out there looking for bespoke clothing for your kids, Rocket's awesome. I think they're now on like either Shopify or like Salesforce now. So they're like all the work that I think I did is like no longer valid. But one of the main projects that I worked on was we had to basically move from our subscription service, where basically we had the survey, and it was a very kind of like rigid, like every quarter you will receive a box of clothes that has been picked out by our design team. And we're going to be moving. This is again this is actually the result of the Purple Twerking Gorilla. It was months of basically us building out our e-commerce shop. And the way that I did this, it was just me, and we had a small team over there too. We'd done some research, and Contentful actually became the Headless CMS of choice that we were going to use. The reason being was because basically the data that we received was in a JSON format. At the time, Contentful, I'm looking at you. At the time, the price was right. Yeah. And basically the way that the system worked was it was basically like the world was your oyster. Drupal is kind of the same way, but I feel like Drupal, WordPress, they have their stuff architected in such a way where it's basically like it's built out from the mindset. Again, this might have changed. It's been a while since I've worked in WordPress. But it's basically built out in such a way where it's like we are kind of architecting it almost as like a blog, right? Where it's like you have like a page, and here's like a rich text intro, or not intro, but like a form that you can basically fill content in. You go ahead and correct me if that's changed, because again, it's been years since I worked in WordPress. I assume they might have updated.
Well, so on the WordPress side specifically, you've got more kind of visual page layout rendering tools in the admin now.
Okay.
It's called Gutenberg block system.
Yep.
It still has the ability to kind of take that, put it into fields.
Yeah.
Drupal very much field based.
Yeah.
They have they have page layout tools as well, but
content types.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah, both have content types. I would say like if you're looking at Contentful though, like yes, it'll represent all of everything in JSON. WordPress, Drupal, they do the same thing.
Yeah.
Like you can build and even if it doesn't, typically even if Contentful does, you'd want to be changing it anyways. So like the sites I've worked on take that, then have an engine that then does things with it, pulls other things in, and then has yet the feed for the front end site. Sometimes it's like, or you can just do it at the application layer, which on WordPress or Drupal is one thing.
Yeah. So my thing is, and again, I don't know if WordPress has this, but Contentful basically has a system called. Oh, there's my daughter with our porch goose. Contentful basically has this specific data type called rich text fields, which allows you to basically embed content inside of content. So it basically becomes it's basically turtles all the way down sort of deal. And basically the way that you do, so the reason why a lot of folks have kind of gravitated towards headless CMSs, especially with React, is because the way that you can kind of wire this up is that although you get this raw JSON, you basically have like a parser that's set up that says, hey, we have this specific piece of content. We know that it's going to be rendered out this way, right? And so basically it allows you a lot of flexibility, a lot of I'd also say a lot of like agility, because you're not having to like program it out. I could be wrong, because I think you can still set up fields and what have you in WordPress via like an API, or not an API, but like an admin sort of setup. But
neither one I would want ever.
See, and that was my thing. Is that, and that was my thing. Is like with Drupal and WordPress, I feel like a lot of the time you have to go in and again, you don't have to, but it's like best practice to kind of like go in and programmatically build them out. Whereas with Contentful or again, I didn't get a chance to dig into this when I was at Jabra Enhanced, but and again, sorry if I'm blowing up your spot, Jabra. One of the systems that they're working on looking into is called Payload, which again, same sort of idea, except for the fact that I think it's actually taking in React components and allows you to do live updates to the actual React component. So when we say like WYSIWYG editor, it is literally like you were editing the component on the site live, which is great. That being said, however,
Yeah, I know some places that are migrating off of WordPress to that,
yeah,
which makes zero sense to me because of that feature,
yeah,
which WordPress has already.
yeah. So, and that was going to be my takeaway. So the caveat that I was going to put in there is, I think there is a lot of folks who kind of just like jump on to bandwagons because, they're like, oh, I heard about this company that's using this new technology and we should use it too. But I have also seen, especially when it comes to Contentful, there has been instances where I've seen some like really bad just content architecture. My thing is, it doesn't matter what tool you're using. It goes back to the old adage, right? Garbage in, garbage out. So the fact that Contentful allows...
It's going to depend on who implements it and how well the implementation was.
Exactly. So that being said, like if you set yourself up to have content types that are portable, being able to like be reused or what have you, like I think you are going to be good if it's WordPress, if it's Drupal, if it's Contentful. The only thing that I will say that Drupal and WordPress, as well as I think some of these other like headless CMSs that you can basically host yourself, is that they don't have a paywall. Whereas Contentful, that was actually one of the reasons why I think Jobber Enhance was looking to get off the Contentful, was because Contentful kept jacking up their prices. When they first came onto the market, I felt like they were like fairly reasonable. Like you didn't have to worry about hosting your content; it was all up there. And they've been continually upping the prices of things. And I think their main thing now is that they, again, not trying to knock Contentful. Contentful, if you're hiring, let me know. But I think their main thing now, yeah, their main thing now. Hey, that's my neighbor's kid. Their main thing now, I think, is also integrating AI into your workflows to, again, help out with, like, content entry, wiring up content. So, again, the way that I always kind of approach any sort of situation is right tool for the job, right? Some of these places where I've come into work, Contentful was kind of, like, already picked. But I would even go on record and say that like there was times where we as developers were like, this might come as like a big no to you. There was even discussion of just having the content live in files on our side and actually having like Git doing version management. The other thing that I was going to ask you about too is static site generators. I don't know if you've even looked at like so. Again, not knocking the work that you do with WordPress and Drupal. I like if I was to create a website right now for a mom and pop shop, I would even like just be like, hey, like let's sit down, let's talk about like what content you want to get out there, and if you're not doing a bunch of like updates on content or what have you, I might even suggest doing like a static site builder. Like I think the one that I worked on recently was Hexo, but there's a bunch of them that are out there. Because that's the thing. It's like if you're not doing the updates, like WordPress and Drupal, I feel like, and again, same thing for Contentful, all these other content management systems. If you're doing a lot of updates on them, or if you have like a large content editing team, I feel like that's when the tools really shine. Is going through like your editing processes and making sure that you can have like collaboration. But hopefully, I don't know if I sold Headless.
I think the static generation definitely has a place. Mm-hmm. I think on like you said, certain sites, and I'm not going to like say it's only the small sites. I think there's a definite way. Like I've even built custom code to be able to generate static markup as a caching. We talked about caching, right? As a caching, like static caching, within the application tier, so that it doesn't have to do all the things ever, and then it purges it very quickly. And that like being able to deploy it to another environment, obviously security is better, things like that. If you don't have a lot of user interaction, and even if you do, then you can build other SaaS systems for the forums and stuff like that.
Sure.
So I do like that model of like, because that would be in my mind kind of like a different variation of headless, right? Because while it's simple, you're still deploying outside of the CMS, so the CMS does all the content management, and then the delivery tier is whether it's static or React, like components of like things getting rendered. It's something like that. And I think there's when the space that I work in and live in, like I have a great example, and this has been a while, but we had a site, not we, Endeavor, even before that. There was a site that had 100 years of archives.
100 years.
There was a decision made to make it a static generated kind of on AWS and have a big architecture. It took 7 days to regenerate that content with not just like, single server. We're talking massive distributed systems to generate 100 years of content. It took 7 days.
Well, again, I feel like that's a lot of content.
Well, and that's but even if you put it on a smaller scale, that generation of files and reading the I/O is definitely something to consider on medium scale sites, I think.
Yeah.
Because even with the static stuff that I like, the static caching, it ended up being, while it took the load off the database, the application then, because of the file I/O, was getting hit a bit on the CPU side.
Yeah.
And then you had a bottleneck there. Like, you're always chasing bottlenecks.
Yeah. Yep. No, and I would definitely agree with you on that, for sure.
Yeah.
And that was
I feel like we should have the 10-year earlier version of Shawn would have had a different position on that versus the 10 years of you actually doing all the work on and having maybe there is a little bit of both.
So
right?
my thing was, even back then I was kind of like, although I definitely had been doing a lot of contentful work, and I liked the tool just again for the flexibility. I felt like their UI was really good. One of the things that actually I built recently when I was at Jobber Enhance was a content versioning system on Contentful itself, which was pretty cool. So basically, Contentful allows you to basically pull in Node npm libraries and then basically hack on the interface that they have there. Again, Drupal, WordPress also have that ability to customize their admin UI. But basically, the fact that you have the npm repository at your fingertips too allowed me to basically pull in there was a I forgot exactly what the library is. I'm gonna see if I can try and grab it while I'm on the call with you. I think it was diff viewer, I think. Viewer npm. I hope that's it.
You know that WordPress, the admin is all React, right?
I did not know it. So as I said, it's been a bit since I've been in WordPress, and that was going to be my question to you.
20 years now, it's all built in React. Not all. Well, there's still PHP, obviously, but the vast majority of the UI of WordPress,
and that was going to be
editing experience.
Yeah, that was actually going to be my main selling point for doing something like Payload, something like Contentful, is say, for instance, you have a engineering team and they are all heavily JavaScript centric. The fact that you're not having to do PHP context switching is, in my mind, is nice, because when I was working at Phase 2, I had to get back into PHP, and again, that was mainly a Drupal shop, and Drupal does things a Drupal way. Yep. So I kind of had to get back into that mindset, and I felt at least with Drupal, again, WordPress I feel is a little bit more let you go with the flow, do your own sort of thing. But with Drupal, I felt it was kind of you have to follow our structure rigidly in order to get stuff done, which I felt actually hampered development time and basically caused a lot of I remember we worked on the MasterCard. There was a MasterCard project that we worked on over at Phase 2. And we had a React portion of the site that basically, I'm actually trying to remember exactly, because that was the main portion that we were working on, where basically I think you a user would basically submit their credentials and see if they qualified for a credit card or not, and then the rest of the site was Drupal. And I remember we had finished the React portion of it way in advance of the Drupal side, and she's got her umbrella. That was basically my thing. My thing was I think Drupal kind of has a very rigid structure about it, and it's kind of I remember when I actually left North Point, I had been doing a lot of Drupal work. I went to a shop that was actually still Drupal, but they were starting to migrate over to they were migrating away from Drupal to a React front end. They were also kind of a bit of a more unique edge case. So I think for a lot of your clients, again, I'm assuming you deal a lot more with editorial and like content driven companies. Is that safe to say?
The majority. We definitely deal with a lot of brand companies as well, though. But yeah.
Yeah. So the company that I went to work for after North Point was a fitness tech company. Mm-hmm. So there is this really, honestly, there was a bunch of really sharp guys there. I was kind of like out of my depth when I came in there. They were trying to have me do a node-based like MySQL query interface, and I was like, at that point still was kind of getting up to speed with like my backend JavaScript. So Mike Berlando, if you're out there, I appreciate you giving me the opportunity. I'm sorry things didn't work out. And they were migrating away from Drupal at the time to React, and then there was this really amazing guy, Carlos. I'm trying to remember his last name, but I'm blanking on it right now. He actually started building out like a bunch of Node microservices to basically, because I'm not sure if you're familiar with, it was Flywheel Sports was the name of the company, basically like Peloton before Peloton. And so like some of the services that he built out was like collecting users' ride data, like real time, comparing it to other people. Basically, like when you were in studios, you'd be able to race against other people while you're on these stationary bikes. And I don't know if WordPress and Drupal really leverage themselves to that sort of environment. But again, that's also, this is kind of like
PHP in general would be
exactly. It's kind
a bit
of
of a push.
Yeah, exactly. You need like more real time sort of data processing. So that's what I was trying to get at. Is like I think you have to kind of pick the right tool for the job. And a lot of startups, again, like I think trying to spin up a WordPress website and like, or more, I would think more begrudgingly spinning up like a Drupal website might be a little bit more work just to kind of get like content up and out the door to folks. But that being said, like my main takeaway from this would be like, I think you shouldn't necessarily discredit Drupal. You shouldn't discredit WordPress because again, they do the job. Like they get the job done. So again, I don't know if I'm doing a great job advocating for headless. That's the other thing too, is like Drupal, WordPress, they can also be headless CMSs now. I remember like when headless CMSs started coming onto the scene, they made like a mad dash to do that. So
yeah. So well, going further back though, we talked about Rotary. So I had built out its services as a headless service for some other things. So
did you really?
Like, I don't know if you remember, I jumped in and out of the project a few times doing some hands-on development. So I demoed.
I don't remember that. Everybody, Matt was just a figurehead. He was just there to look good in the office, and everybody.
Right. Yeah, I built out some JSON APIs to basically feed some other applications.
I actually don't remember that though. What? So can you
for like there's some kind of finder. I don't know that it was a
that's
club
right.
finder.
Yeah. And also, I feel like it might. Hold on, I'm going to see if I can refocus here. Focus. Can you focus on
You might have hit. Did you hit 2 of the drinks? It was supposed to be a 1 drink max.
Oh, I'm already on like number 3. No. I think I remember. Now that you mentioned this, I think I do remember. Was it the Rotary Club Finder?
It might have. It was definitely a finder of some kind. It might have been the Rotary Club Finder. I even did some like talks on that too, because like to me it wasn't that big of a deal, because I was doing my own little startup around that time of garage sale finding. Like it was Tag Seller or something like that, and I had built that on Drupal. So I knew how to build, and that was for apps. So we had apps that were hitting the services. So like this whole idea of headless and like, oh, WordPress and Drupal weren't doing it at some point. It's like, no, it's always been like, it wasn't like part of core on both of them, but there's always been a plugin or module, it feels like, for both of those, especially Drupal. Like, because then I was doing that 15 plus years ago.
Yeah. And that's what I was going to say is like, I don't think even back when we were doing Drupal and WordPress development, I don't think there was anything stopping you from like ingesting sources of data or like, again, creating custom plugins. It was just, at least with Drupal and WordPress, you just kind of had to know the ecosystem to do it. Same thing with Contentful.
Yeah, that's true.
The only thing that is kind of nice with Contentful is like you don't have to worry about like hosting it yourself. They basically take care of it. But I think again now grizzled veteran Shawn would basically say, like, I don't know if the price, at least for Contentful, I don't know if the price is necessarily worth it. They do offer like a free tier, so if you're doing like a hobby project and you want to try and like start scaffolding out, and if you're not necessarily like maybe like as technically savvy, I would even say like go ahead and give that a shot still too, like that, or even if you want to start investigating like with WordPress or Drupal, I wouldn't like, I wouldn't say like, oh man, why are you using like old tech? Because it's like, no, it's fine. It still does what it needs to do.
Right.
That kind of goes back to like my discussion with you earlier about like React, and it seems like folks are kind of like maybe cooling on that a little bit. Again, it's all been like kind of quiet and on the DL. But yeah, it's that. So
I think everything's quiet, and we're not even going to be able to get into this topic. But
yeah,
I think AI is changing our whole world. So, and that's probably the only time that we have to talk about AI.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's a whole a whole thing in itself.
Because I do want to spend some time, not a lot of time, because we don't have a lot of time left. But like, what can we do? Our big audience, right? Mm-hmm. We don't have a big audience in this podcast. If you've gotten this far, that's amazing. Hopefully, we're going to share. We're going to talk about Shawn in the next couple of days because I've worked with him a long time. I've seen what he's done. We definitely want to get him back in the workplace. It's a tough job market. Going back to AI, that's one big reason, but it doesn't take away from senior engineers. So, what can we do to help you, or what are you doing? Are you looking to stay within web development?
Yeah, so right now I am starting to try and spread my wings a little bit. I'm starting to do a little bit more full stack development, but I've been shopping around. So if folks are looking for a front end engineer, again, I have several years of experience doing React work. Obviously, like I would say I'm definitely well qualified when it comes to HTML, CSS, JavaScript. But yeah, that's kind of like what I'm looking to do is get back into web development and just get in with a company, help them, get whatever projects that they need done and off the ground. And web development, I feel like it's still where it's at. Even though we have AI, I feel like having developers is still a necessary component to getting stuff done and out the door.
Yeah, I personally think, yes, developer level, entry, everything is important. A lot of people don't agree with that, but the mid to senior and senior, like the fact that people are laying off senior developers given that there's a replacement, like I can only get so much work done with AI.
Yeah.
Because I can only think so much, right? So it can only do so much because I'm having to come through the problem. If we're going to replace product managers, not that there's anything wrong with product managers, and then have them build out requirements the way that AI can do it, then we're going to get there. But that's a ways off. Like we've been trying to get that for my whole career, I feel like, and that's the reason why offshore didn't take everything over. So unless we're going to replace the ability to iterate really quickly, you have to have the senior and mid-level engineers, developers around, and that's the bulk of the workforce for building these things out.
Yeah.
At least production-wise, like production-grade stuff.
Yeah.
You can demo anything you want.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you are in the New York metro area.
I am, yeah. So again, if folks are interested, I am in the tri-state area. Again, also I would definitely tout Endeavor. As I mentioned before, they've got like over a decade worth of experience. Like Miki and Matt are absolute machines when it comes to getting stuff done and out the door. So yeah, I would also say if you're looking for a organization to come in and help augment your team, get anything done, I would definitely say, by all means, check out Endeavor. They're a great group of people, and they definitely know what they're doing.
Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem.
I feel like if we had a budget for this podcast, you should be the actual person doing the questioning and.
Hey, I would be happy to come back on at any time. Feel free. I remember we actually tried.
We'll tell you the early intern rates, maybe.
Yeah.
Ones where you didn't look at your paycheck.
Yeah, but I would be happy to be on and pick your brain about other topics in the future too. If you want me to come back on, I'd be happy to do it.
All right. Well,
Cool.
we will do that. We'll definitely do, because we didn't get a chance to actually critique any websites, but we'll
Yeah,
do something.
we'll definitely have to do that at some point.
So maybe some old. We've shied away from critiquing like clients and even old clients, but maybe we have to do that as like a real special version.
Just so long as you don't bring up promising, I'm good. I don't know if folks know about that. Yeah, you're like, yeah, no, we're not going to do that.
No.
Cool. Well, hey, thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it. I hope you had a good time. I know I did.
Definitely.
There's my neighbor again.
All right.
Awesome.
All
Well,
right.
hey,
We're going to say
thank you
goodbye
so
to
much.
everyone else.
Take care. Bye.